2024 has been a polarising year for the UFC. It's had some fantastic fights and a handful of great pay-per-views, but I genuinely think it's one of the worst years we've had in mixed martial arts. But before I get into the year in review, if you're new here, make sure you subscribe as I have brand new videos every single week. So let's start big. What is the best knockout of 2024? For me, there isn't anything better than Max Holloway finishing Justin Gaethje at UFC 300. This was the second time that Max had fought at lightweight since 2019 when he lost to Dustin Poirier. The narrative coming into this fight was that Max stood zero chance, that he was too small for this division and Justin Gaethje was too dangerous, but Max proved all of the doubters wrong. He dominated from the opening bell and his timing was impeccable. Then in the fifth and final round, whilst Max was up on the scorecards, he risked everything, pointing to the ground in now what is one of the most iconic moments in MMA, and the pair started swinging and Max flattened Justin with a second left on the clock. The fact that he was already winning this fight is what makes it even better. He could have easily just sat back and coasted to the decision, so this has to be the best KO of 2024, if not one of the best of all time. So let's stick with the topic of finishes. What's the best submission of 2024? There are some real contenders for this one. Islam versus Dustin, Ortega versus Rodriguez, even Duplessis submitted as well, Adesanya. But for me, the best submission, even though a painful one mentally for me and physically for Rob Whittaker, was Khamzat Chimaev at UFC 308. Khamzat came out in the first round and had his way with Whittaker, dragging him down, controlling him, and he locked in a rear naked choke, and Whittaker tapped immediately. There was a lot of confusion about what had actually happened, as it didn't look like the choke was under the chin, but it turned out Whittaker's jaw had dislocated and his lower mandible had snapped. This has to be one of the nastiest submissions I've ever seen, and it shows the dominance that Khamzat can have in this division if he can get healthy. But let's quickly move on from that painful moment. What is the best pay-per-view of 2024? We had three of the best pay-per-views in a row this year: UFC 298, UFC 299, and the whopper that is UFC 300. Any of these could be crowned as the best pay-per-view of the year, but I think due to pure size and the name value on this card, it has to go to UFC 300. The first fight of the night was Deiveson Figueiredo versus Cody Garbrandt, two former champions in the opening bout of the early prelims. That is ridiculous. You would never get that on any other card. The name value on this card was insane. We had 11 former current champions, plus we had the BMF belt on the line and 2 championships on the line. Every fight from the opening to closing bell was banger after banger. There is no doubt in my mind that this was the best pay-per-view of the year, if not one of the best pay-per-views of all time. Now, we can't be too positive. We need to talk about some of the negative stuff this year. What was the worst pay-per-view of 2024? This year has been filled with some dog pay-per-views. Opening the year, we had UFC 297 with Duplessis versus Strickland, and in the co-main, Pennington versus Silva. And to bookend this year in crap, we had UFC 310 with Pantoja versus Kai Asakura. But which card is the worst? For me, it has to be UFC 301. It felt like after we had the big cards with 298, 299 and 300, there just simply wasn't anyone else left to fight. So it was a mad scramble to put a card together. I like Pantoja. He's clearly a very talented champion, but he faced off against Steven Erceg, who just didn't deserve the title shot at all. It's hard to be invested in the flyweight division at the moment, so it's even harder to invest in a pay-per-view when it's the main event. Though there was a silver lining to this card, and it was the return of the King of Rio himself, Jose Aldo, but he faced off against Jonathan Martinez. Who gives a crap, right? Aldo is a legend of the sport and he should be fighting other big names and other legends. This was a waste of a return. So UFC 301 is the worst pay-per-view of 2024. Now that's it for negativity. Let's get back on to the best of the year. What was the best fight of 2024? This is a difficult one to pick. For me, usually the best fights are a back and forth war that goes the distance, but there haven't been that many of them this year. There's been a lot of dominant performances all year round. But a fight that stands out for me is Benoit Saint-Denis versus Dustin Poirier. On a technical standpoint, this is probably not the best fight, but the narrative around it was so good. A veteran of the game coming off a big KO loss, risking it all against a scary young prospect, and Benoit looked incredibly scary at the start of this fight. He dominated the first round and kicked the absolute crap out of Dustin, and it looked like the end was in sight, and it was, but not for Dustin.
Call an ambulance! Call an ambulance! But not for me.
I'm not sure if it was the lack of experience, but Benoit came out with an incredibly high pace and quickly got tired, and then just started swinging big and got flattened by Dustin. Dustin was in the clutches of defeat, but managed to pull it back and even earned himself a title shot from this victory. So for me, the story around this is why it's the best fight of 2024. Fight of the year was a tricky one, but let's move on to something a little less tricky. What is the most shocking moment of 2024? There are a lot of candidates for this RKO of the year, Max Holloway, or the brutal submission from Khamzat Chimaev, but what tops them all? What is the most shocking moment of 2024? It has to be Ilia Topuria finishing the unfinishable in Max Holloway. To put this in perspective, in 29 professional fights over 14 years, Max had never been KO'd. He'd never even been dropped. He was known for his iron chin and arguably one of the best chins in combat sports until he met Ilia Topuria, the supervillain of the featherweight division. After Max's performance against Justin Gaethje, I thought he'd hit a new prime and I could never doubt him again. But Ilia Topuria ran through Max like he was paper mache and flattened him in the third round, shocking the entire MMA community and breaking all of our hearts. I don't think anyone expected Ilia to flatten Max, apart from Ilia himself. Now we're on to the final stretch with the best male and female fighters of the year. So let's start with who is the best female fighter of 2024. It's been slim pickings for women's MMA this year, having only 4 title fights and only 2 of them were any good. Zhang Weili versus Yan Xiaonan and Alexa Grasso versus Valentina Shevchenko 3. Zhang Weili is one of my favourite fighters on the roster and I'd pick her if I could, but there's no denying that Valentina Shevchenko has had an amazing year. This year, when Valentina was set to face Alexa Grasso for the 3rd time, I wasn't sure she could get the win. Let's not forget Alexa is the woman who choked her out and then went tooth and nail with her in the second fight to get a draw. The odds were incredibly stacked against Valentina, but Valentina went away, made some big adjustments and dominated Grasso in the 3rd fight. It wasn't even close. It was a beautiful moment to see one of the best female fighters of all time get the gold back. Now, we've had female fighter of the year, but who is the best male fighter of 2024? The Chinese Zodiac would have you believe it's the year of the dragon, but you were lied to. It's the year of Po Tan. There is no doubt in my mind that Alex Pereira is the best male fighter of 2024. He headlined 3 pay-per-views, one of them in the best pay-per-view of the year, and all 3 fights ended in devastating finishes. Alex has become a superstar this year and has saved countless cards, even stepping up last minute to save the Conor McGregor versus Chandler card. Alex has carried this year on his back alone. Thank you, Alex Pereira, because you are the fighter of 2024. That's been my year in review. Thank you everyone for watching. Make sure you comment your best of 2024 down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out.